Hey, what's up YouTube? This is Youthman. Today we're hanging out in my home theater. We're going to be looking at 3 different ways that you can control the settings on the SVS SB16 Ultra subwoofers. And before we get into the video, if you're new to the channel and you're into home theater, audio, and video, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to hit the bell notification so that you'll be notified when the next video drops. In the last video, we set up the SVS subwoofers, got those in place, hooked up the interconnects, and we've got them connected to my Onkyo receiver. Now that we've got them set up and in place, I want to walk through the 3 different ways that you can actually control the different settings on the SVS subwoofer. So we're going to look at each one of those 3 methods of controlling the subwoofer to let you know what options are available for each method. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the front control panel. The front control panel has an LCD display here, along with 4 buttons. You have an up arrow, a down arrow, a left, and a right. The up and down arrows allow you to cycle through the different options. The right arrow is your enter, and the left arrow is your back. And so we're just going to go through these pretty quickly. The first option is your volume. If you want to adjust the volume, you would hit to the right to hit enter. And then you can increase or decrease. So I'm going to click the left button to go back. The next option, if I hit down, takes us to the low pass filter. Low pass filter, you have a couple of options. You can either turn it on or off. If you turn it on and hit to the right, it allows you to select the frequency. So if I hit enter again, so here we have the low pass frequency. If I go back and if we go down, we have an option for the actual low pass slope, and to go and make changes to that, we would hit the enter key, and you can do a 12 decibel. I think there's a 6, a 12, 18, and 24. Okay, so we're gonna actually I'm gonna put that on 24. So we're gonna go back again, back again. So now we're back at the main area again. So the next option is your phase. Sometimes you'll need to change the phase if it just doesn't sound right. If you're not getting enough bass, sometimes by changing the phase can affect that. But typically you're going to leave that on 0. So we'll go back. So if we hit down, the next option is polarity. Kind of the same thing. Polarity, you've got an option for positive and negative. Typically you're just going to leave it at the default, which is going to be on your positive. But if something just doesn't sound right, go ahead and swap that and see if you get better results. If you do, then leave it there. If you don't, put it back to what the default is. If we come down to the next option, that's your parametric EQ. Now honestly, this is a little bit more advanced. So you have 3 PEQ or parametric EQ settings. You've got 1, 2, and 3. If I go back to the top and go to the right, we've got an option to turn it on or off just by hitting the up or down. If we turn it on, we can come over to the right again and we can change the frequency, we can change the boost, and we can change the Q factor. Now again, these are kind of some advanced settings, but you do have those options. So I'm going to go back, back, and back. The next option is your room gain compensation. This option can be used if your subwoofers sound a little bloated. There's some settings there, so if I hit to the right, you can actually turn that on or turn it off. Let's go back. The next option is presets. So you have 3 presets that you can set. We've got movie, music, and you can also set a custom, or you can go back to default. These are great in case you want to set certain presets for when you're, say, listening to music, or maybe when you're watching a movie, or maybe when you're gaming, you like more bass, less bass, and so forth. Let's go back. Let's say you make some adjustments to the settings. You change the parametric EQ, maybe you change the low pass filter, and you change the volume, and you want to store that. You'd come down to the save to option, hit enter, come down to the one that you want, and then hit enter again, and you're going to save that to that preset. If we come back, down in the settings, there's several options. So if we hit enter, we're going to get 4 options. We've got a display option, a timeout option, a standby, and a reset. So let's go back up to the display. So if I hit display and I hit the enter button, we have a couple options. We can either have the display show the volume, you can have it display the SVS logo, or you can turn it off. So if you're having this up in the front of your home theater and you don't want to see it, Let's just go ahead and put it off. So what will happen is, after a few seconds, that display will disappear because I've turned it to off. See, it just disappeared. So if we come down to the next option, that's your timeout. This allows you to set the amount of time it takes before that action takes place. So we can set that to 10 seconds all the way up to 60 seconds. So I'm going to back that back down to 10 seconds. We're going to hit enter. And then we're going to give it 10 seconds. And once again, you'll see that the LCD display changes to black. Just like that. So we're going to hit up again. So we're going to come back down to timeout. Make sure that's set at 10. I'm going to come back and go up to the display. We're going to hit enter. I'm going to go ahead and change that back to volume and hit enter. So we're back at display. We've already looked at timeout. Our next option is standby. Now standby has a couple options here. So if we hit enter, we'll see 3 different options. We have auto, we have on, and we have trigger. Now I typically keep it on auto. But let's say if you had a trigger. In the previous video where we set up the SVS subwoofers and made all our connections, I showed you that on the back of the subwoofer, there's an option to connect a 12 volt trigger. Now what a 12 volt trigger does is it's a cable that typically would connect from, say, your receiver, if it has trigger outputs, to the back of this subwoofer. And what happens is when you turn on your receiver, it sends a signal through that cable to the subwoofer telling it to turn on. And when you're finished, say, watching your movie and you turn your receiver off, then it sends another signal to the subwoofer to tell it to turn off. Since I currently do not have 12 volt triggers, I'm just going to set that to auto. If you wanted to leave your subwoofers always on, then you would set it to on. So we're going to come back. So we're in under the settings. Let's come back down here to, so we've already looked at standby. So the last option down here is your reset. So what reset allows you to do is restore all these settings back to factory default. So we're not going to do that, but if you needed to do that, you have that option. Inside the SB16 manual on page 18, you'll find a front control panel flowchart so that you can more easily kind of visualize how each one of these menu options are structured. Okay, so the second option that we have to control the subwoofers is through the use of the IR remote, the infrared remote. Now this remote is line of sight, so you'll need to be able to see the subwoofer. It can't be in a cabinet and it can't shoot through a wall. So if you've got it hidden or behind a couch, it's not going to work with this. So as long as you've got line of sight, you can use this remote. So let's take a look at the buttons. So up here at the top, we've got a negative and a positive for volume. So we can easily adjust that. Right underneath that, we've got our up and down arrow, just like we did on the front panel. So we can cycle through the different options. When you find something that you want, say for instance under setting, to the right is your enter button. To the left is your back button. So it's very similar to what we have on the front. Down here on the middle, which is pretty cool, this is a quick setting to allow you to turn on and off the display. So you don't have to cycle through the menu to go all the way to setting, go over, go to display, and turn that to off. So that's a really nice feature. Down here at the bottom, you got 3 handy buttons for your presets. So you've got preset 1, which is movie, preset 2, which is music, and preset 3, which is your custom. So the infrared mode is definitely a handy feature. Now it's a really small remote, so you could lose this pretty quickly. So in my opinion, this still isn't the best option, but it's definitely one that's available if you choose to use that. Now since this is line of sight, you can use it to control both subwoofers. You just point at one, you would have to change, say for instance, the volume, and then you just point to the other subwoofer and change the volume. If you had a third one, point at that one, change the volume, and so forth. So as long as you're pointing to the right subwoofer, you can change just that one particular subwoofer settings. Now the third and most exciting way to control your SVS subwoofers is by using the SVS app. Now the SVS app is available on both Android as well as Apple devices. If you have an Android device, you'll want to go to the Google Play Store. Since I have an Apple device, I'm going to go to the App Store. Once in the App Store, I'm going to click on search and I'm going to type in SVS app and hit search. Once that pulls up, we're going to scroll down and we're going to download the SVS app. Once that downloads, we're going to go back to my home screen and click on the SVS app. Now before you connect your SVS subwoofer, you need to make sure that you have Bluetooth enabled on your device. So on my iPhone, I can slide up from the bottom, and so I can see here that Bluetooth is enabled. So we'll go back to the app, and I'm going to click on Connect Subwoofer. At the very top, you'll see a drop-down menu, so we're going to click on that orange down arrow, and I'm going to choose Connect Subwoofer. Now in my room, I currently have two SVS SB16 Ultra subwoofers. So you'll see both of these that are listed here. So I'm going to click on the first option to connect to the subwoofer. Now you do have an option to go through some tutorials, but since we're going to be walking through each individual item within the app, we're going to go ahead and click on Enter the app. Okay, so here we are on the home page. From the home page, you can control the volume by clicking and dragging on the slider. Now you'll notice as I drag the slider, it adjusts the volume in real time. You can also use the left arrow key and the right arrow key to adjust them incrementally. Right below the volume, we have presets. So if I click on the preset drop-down menu, you'll see our three options for movie, music, and custom, as well as setting it back to default. So let's go ahead and choose movie. So as you can see on the LCD screen, the movie preset has been loaded. Now below that, you have quick access to all the options within the app. So if we click on that drop-down menu, you'll see we have all the options for home and low pass filter and so forth. But instead of going through them individually in this page, I'm going to take you to another area in the app. So we're going to click outside of this blue area to get back to the home page. Right below the options drop-down menu, you have an option to turn the subwoofer display on and off. Now if I click on that button, you'll notice the display on the LCD goes blank. If I click it again, it brings it back. Now in this current version of the SVS app, inside the app you do not have any notification of whether or not that is turned on or turned off. But for now, you'll just have to look at the front LCD panel to see whether or not it is on or off. If you have issues with your subwoofer, you can always contact SVS support within the app. So we're going to click on Contact SVS Support. And here you see some different support options. If you need to call them, you could click on the phone number and click call, and it'll call directly from the app. I'm going to click cancel. You'll see an option for email as well as visiting their website. And right under that, we have a link to register our SVS subwoofer. So if we click on that, it takes you to the SVS website. And on this page, you'll enter your email address, name, what country you're from, the product, serial number, purchase date, and some other information. So we're not going to do that right now, but we're going to go back to the SVS app. If you need to contact them through social media, the social media icons are down below. Now up at the top right, you'll see three white lines with dots next to them. That's our main toggle for the menu. So let's go ahead and click on that icon. Here you'll see all the different options for the SVS app. So we've already visited the home page and the volume page. So the next option is the low pass filter. So I'm going to click on that. The low pass filter allows us to filter out frequencies that are above a certain frequency. Since subwoofers are designed to only play low frequencies, you don't need a subwoofer to play mid-range or high frequencies that you would typically find going through a tweeter. So to enable the low pass filter, we're going to click on the toggle button at the top. And you'll see on the front panel it says LP on, and over to the left of the toggle button on the app it says on LFE disabled. Now we'll talk about LFE in just a moment. Now Dolby and THX typically recommend starting with 80 Hz. 80 Hz is just a good all-around crossover, so by turning on the low pass filter, any frequencies coming from your receiver or your processor that is over 80 Hz will be filtered out and will not play through your subwoofer. If you have larger speakers, like in my room right now, I have two Klipsch RF7 version 3s. They have dual 10-inch drivers, and so they can actually handle quite a bit of bottom end. They can handle a lot of bass. If I wanted to, I may want my main speakers to handle some of that bass. If you want to change the frequency of the low pass filter, you can click and drag to the left or click and drag to the right to set that at your desired frequency. So right now we'll just select 60 Hz. Below that you have options for slope, 6 dB, 12 dB, 18 dB, and 24 dB. Now the slope is just the rate at which the low pass filter rolls off. So my recommendation is to turn the crossover off in the app and you'll see right here to the left of that toggle switch it says LFE mode active, which is your low frequency effects. So here's what some people don't realize. If you set your crossover in the subwoofer to 80 Hertz, in a movie you actually have a front left channel, a center channel, a right channel, surround channels, and a subwoofer channel. Now the subwoofer channel is called the LFE channel. When movie producers make a movie, they will send content through that channel specifically just for the subwoofer. And that content will range anywhere from really low frequencies all the way up to, say, 120 Hertz. So if you set your crossover in your subwoofer to 80 Hertz, you're going to be missing those effects that are above 80 Hertz. So again, my recommendation, turn the subwoofer crossover off in your subwoofer and let your receiver determine what frequencies it's going to send to the subwoofer. The next option is our phase. Now the phase we can choose anywhere between 0 and 180 degrees. Now typically in most rooms you're going to leave it at 0 degrees. Now the phase adjustment can sometimes fix sound wave cancellation issues. Now if your subwoofer is near your main speakers, you're going to want to leave this at 0. But if you have your subwoofers in other locations, you may find that by changing it to 180 degrees will improve the bass response in your room. So we'll leave this at 0 and go back to the main menu. And our next option is polarity. Under polarity we have just two options, either positive or negative. Now sometimes you can switch the polarity to negative to fix boominess, or maybe there's a lack of bass in your room. And by switching it from positive to negative, sometimes that'll fix and correct that. If you're getting good solid bass in your listening position, you can just leave it at positive. But feel free to try it both ways to see which way sounds best in your room. So we'll go ahead and go back to the main menu. The next option we have is the Parametric EQ. Now this is an incredible feature built into the SB16 Ultras. Now what the Parametric EQ allows you to do is fix problem areas in your room due to either peaks, which is an exaggerated amount of bass, or nulls, which is a lack of bass. Now before you change any settings in the Parametric EQ, I would highly recommend using some kind of room analysis software. Now one software that is used quite often is the Room EQ Wizard. Sometimes it's referred to as REW or RU. The RU software is free. You can download it from the link in the description below. You're also going to need some type of computer, maybe a laptop, as well as a microphone. One microphone that is used quite often is the Mini DSP. I'll also post a link to it in the description below as well. Once you run the RU software and it analyzes your room, you'll be able to see on a graph what frequencies are boosted and what frequencies in your room have dips or nulls. Now the Parametric EQ is a powerful tool that allows you to adjust for those dips and peaks within your room. So inside the Parametric EQ, we have 3 settings that we can make. So by default, all 3 of these settings are turned off. So we're going to enable the first PEQ, and to do that we're just going to click on the toggle switch. Once we do that, on the front of the subwoofer, you'll see that it says PEQ1 on, and you can also tell that it's turned on in the app. The toggle switch is turned orange. Now below the toggle switch, you can see that we have adjustments for frequency, boost, and Q factor. So hypothetically, let's say you run the RU software and it shows that you have a null in the 40 Hertz range by 2 decibels. So we're going to come down here to frequency and we're going to slide it to the left until we get to 40 Hertz. And once we have that set to 40 Hertz, remember we have a null of 2 decibels. So that means that we need to boost by 2 decibels. So we're going to click the right arrow till we get to 2 dB. So you can see by the graph, we have boosted the 40 Hertz range by 2 decibels. And so once again, hypothetically, let's say that you look at the RU software and it shows that you have a peak in the 60 Hertz range by 3 decibels. So at the top, we're going to click on the second option that says PEQ2 disabled, and we're going to click on the toggle to the right of that. Once that is enabled, we're going to come down to frequency and we're going to increase that to 60 Hertz. And we said that there was a peak at 60 Hertz by 3 decibels. So we're going to slide the boost to the left until we get to 3 dB. And if you go too far, of course, you can use your arrows to do some fine tuning. So there we go. So now that we've got -3, you can see on the graph, we've reduced the 60 Hz frequency range by 3 decibels. If you had another frequency you needed to adjust, you would click on the PEQ3, enable it, and add the frequency boost and also a Q factor. So let's go back to our main menu and come down to the next option, which is room gain compensation. Now the room gain compensation is typically used for small rooms. Sometimes in a small room, you've got so much bass that the room sounds quite boomy in certain frequencies. So by enabling the room gain compensation, we'll click on the toggle switch. We now have access to 3 different frequencies, 25 Hz, 31 Hz, as well as 40 Hz. Down below that, we have some options for a slope of either 6 dB or 12 dB. So we're going to click outside the blue square to go back to the menu, and we're going to go back up to the main menu. The next option is our preset. On this page, you see our 3 presets, movie, music, as well as custom. If we wanted to choose a preset, we could click on the drop-down menu and choose, let's say, movie. Now, one really convenient feature within the app is you have the ability to name your presets whatever you want. So we're going to do that with the custom. So to the right of the custom, we're going to click on Edit Name. I'm going to click the backspace and I'm going to type in the word night, N-I-G-H-T, and click Done. So now if I click on the preset drop-down menu, you'll see we have movie, music, and night. Now we'll go ahead and click away from the blue square to get back to the main page. Now in just a little bit, I'll show you how to apply settings to that preset, but for now, we're going to go on to the next menu item. So we'll go ahead and go back to the main menu by clicking on the icon at the top right, and we're going to go down to System Settings. Under the System Settings, one of the first things I would recommend doing is renaming your subwoofer or subwoofers. So in this case, the subwoofer that I have connected is the left subwoofer in my room. So I'm going to click on Edit Name, click the backspace, and I'm going to type in left and hit Done. So now at the very top, you can see that it's been renamed to SB16 left. If I click on the drop-down menu at the very top, you'll see I still have the 2 subwoofers. One of them has been renamed. The other one still has the serial number. So for now, we're going to leave that as is and click back on the main page. Below the subwoofer name, we have the subwoofer standby. If we click that drop-down menu, we'll see the 3 options for auto, on, and trigger. If you set it to auto, the subwoofer will automatically go into a standby mode after a period of time when it does not receive a signal. If you choose to keep your subwoofer always on and use the main switch on the back of the subwoofer, you could choose the on option. Now the 12-volt trigger is the option that allows your receiver to turn on and off the toggle switch if it has 12-volt outputs. If your receiver has 12-volt triggers, you could connect a cable from your receiver to the subwoofer, and in the app you would select trigger, and now when you turn on your receiver, it'll send a 12-volt signal to the subwoofer telling it to turn on, and when you turn your receiver off, it'll tell the subwoofer to turn off. So right now we're going to choose auto. Now below subwoofer standby, we have options for the subwoofer display. If I click on the display drop-down menu, you'll see we have 3 options for volume, logo, and off. If you have the subwoofer display set to volume, the front LCD panel on the subwoofer will display the volume. If you prefer to have the SVS logo to show on the front of the LCD, we would choose logo, and after a few seconds you'll see the SVS logo scroll. So here you see the SVS SB16 Ultra logo displayed. If we click back on the display, the 3rd option is off. So if I choose off, you'll notice below the display there's a timeout and it currently says 10 seconds. So after 10 seconds, the display will turn off like it did just now. If you want to adjust that amount of time, you could click on that drop-down menu, and you have options anywhere from off all the way up to 60 seconds. So right now we're going to leave that at 10 seconds. And instead of the display being off, I'm going to click back on display and change that back to volume. If we scroll down, we see an option for the display brightness. If we click and drag that to the left, you'll see the display gets dimmer. If you drag it to the right, the display will get brighter. So I'm going to turn that down to about here. Below that, you have an option for display lock. Now, if you have children in your home and they love to push buttons on your equipment, this is a really handy feature. By clicking on the display lock, you'll see that on the front LCD it now says lock on. So if I were to come over here and push any of the buttons, you'll notice I won't be able to change the subwoofer settings. To turn it off, you would just click the button in the app again, and now it says lock off. Now currently in the app, you cannot tell whether or not that lock is on or off. You'll have to look at the front of the subwoofer. This may be something that SVS changes in a future update. If you need to reset your subwoofer back to factory default, you would click the Reset to Factory Default Settings button at the bottom. Now, one reason you may want to set it back to factory default is, let's say you move to a new home. The new home has a different size room, different room acoustics, and instead of trying to undo a lot of the settings, you may decide just to reset it to factory and start over. If we scroll down below that, we have some information about the app, which tells you things like the version, the build, and so forth. So we'll click out of that and go back up to the top right menu. The next option is Contact SVS Support, which we saw at the beginning of this tutorial. So let's click back to the menu and come down to Tutorial. Now we've already looked at the Connecting a Subwoofer tutorial at the beginning of this video, so we're going to click on the second option, All Feature Tutorials. If we click on that button, you'll see that we have access to all of the tutorials in the app. To view each one of them, you're just going to swipe to the left, and you can go all the way through the tutorials and read those. When you're finished reading, you can click on the top right X. Now, if you don't want to scroll through each one, you can click on the feature tutorial list, and now we see all of the available tutorials. And let's say we wanted a refresher on how to use the Parametric EQ. I could click on Parametric EQ, and you'll only see the tutorial for that particular option. So at the bottom, you'll see two little dots. That means there's 2 pages, so we can swipe to the left to see that second page. Once you're finished reading, again, you could click on the top right X. So let's go ahead and click on the top right menu and go back to our home page. Now remember, we created a preset earlier for night. So let's say I wanted to create a preset that I could easily change some settings on the subwoofer for the times that I wanted to watch a movie late at night when my family's asleep or when my neighbors are asleep. So let's say I wanted to reduce the volume of the subwoofer to -30. And we want to apply that volume setting to that night preset. The way that we apply that to a preset is by clicking on the up arrow at the very bottom of the app. When I click on the up arrow, you'll see 3 options there. Over to the far right, there's an option to save to preset. So if I wanted to save the home and volume settings to that preset, I would click on the icon that says Save to Preset, and I would choose the night and hit Save. So now let's take a look and see if that applied that setting. So on this home page, we have our presets. So I can click on the preset drop-down menu. So let's change that to movie, which had a default volume of -10. Let's go back to that menu and now choose night, and you'll see that the volume is changed to -30. Now you can apply any setting in the app to a preset. So let's say we go back to the main menu and we go to low pass filter, and let's turn on the low pass filter, and let's just change it down to 70 Hertz. If I wanted to apply these settings to just that preset, I would click the up arrow, hit Save to Preset, change to night, and hit Save. So as you can see, that's a handy feature to make custom presets that fits your needs in your room. Now once again, let's click on the up arrow at the bottom of the page. Over to the left, you'll see an option that says Reset the Low Pass to Default. Now that option will only reset whatever page that you're on. It will not do a factory default and reset all the settings. So if I wanted to reset the low pass filter back to factory default, I would click that option, and you'll see that the low pass filter is now turned off and it's set back to 80 Hertz. If I needed to see the tutorial for the low pass filter, I can access it directly by clicking on the question mark in the middle that says About this feature. If I click that, you'll see it takes me right to the tutorial for that particular page. Let's go ahead and click the X. Now once you've made all the changes in the app to your subwoofer, if you have multiple subwoofers, unfortunately in this version of the app, you cannot copy those settings to the additional subwoofers. So in my case, I have 2 subwoofers, so I would need to click on the drop down arrow at the top of the screen. choose my second subwoofer, which is the SB16E5BF. So we'll click that. Now I want to go ahead and rename that one, so I'm going to click on the top right menu button, go down to System Settings, click on Edit Name, and I'm going to hit the backspace, and I'm going to type in RGHT. Now I'm having to abbreviate since the app only allows you to have 8 characters for the name. So I'm going to go ahead and click Done. Now if I go back to that top drop-down menu, you'll see that now I can tell which subwoofer I'm actually controlling a lot more easily because they've been renamed and I'm not looking at just serial numbers. So now that we've gone through the app, I'm going to set the subwoofers back to factory default. And the way I do that is go to the top right menu, come down to System Settings, scroll down, and we're going to click on Reset to Factory Settings. It says, "Are you sure?" We're going to click Yes. It says Reset Complete. Now I'm going to come back up to the top again, click on Left. It's going to load that subwoofer. I'm also going to click Reset to Factory, hit Yes, and you'll see on the front LCD it says Done. That lets you know that the reset has been complete. Alright guys, well that's a look at how you can control the SVS SB16 subwoofer. Now I believe the same is going to be true for several of their subwoofer lines, like the PB16 as well as some of the others. So we can control it through the front panel. We can control it through the infrared remote. But my favorite of all by far is being able to control it through the app. Now SVS, that right there is super, super cool. Not only is it super easy to navigate, it's extremely functional, offers you a lot of capability to modify the settings within the subwoofer itself, as well as some customization through presets, naming each one. Once you make all of the setting changes, let's say to polarity, room compensation, volume, preset, renaming the front panel for, say, movies or music. Once you get done with that, from what I can see in here, there's not a way to copy all of those settings from subwoofer 1 to subwoofer 2, 3, and 4. So I would have to go in and manually either write down my parametric EQ settings for each one, go in there. So it definitely would be a lot more time consuming. This may be an easy thing for SVS, it may not be, but just something to consider for the consumer. I ran into zero flaws with it. Everything that I touched worked immediately. There's no lag between when I change the decibels, I'm looking over there. There's absolutely no lag. It's an immediate change. So that's really, really cool. Very well done. Very well put together. I really, really like the app. I think that's fantastic. This is a huge step up from what I'm used to with my 15-year-old Klipsch RSW-15 Subwoofers. So that's exciting to me. So of course my next question is, can the dual SB16 subwoofers at least equal the Klipsch RSW-15s? SVS has received a huge amount of praise over the years in the audio community for their subwoofers. What I'm seeing, they produce a fantastic looking design, style, functionality. Everything looks great, but I can't wait to get these hooked up tomorrow till I can actually crank these up and find out how well do they perform. Now, looking at my front stage here, they may not be in the optimal position just because technically they're not up against a wall. They're actually about 3 feet, 3.5 feet from my front wall because they're in front of my cabinet. So I may have to play with some placement. There's not a lot of options in this room. But what I may do is actually move them to the left corner over here, move the second subwoofer over to the right wall, so at least it will have some boundary gain. If you look at SVS's suggestions in their manual, that they mention that you may get more accurate sound is by placing them on the side walls. So I'll try that both ways to see, do I get better bass response from them being positioned on the sides versus in the front. And of course, eventually I want to remove my 4 Klipsch RSW-15s and put the 2 SB16s right behind the screen. So that way it'll be where I would normally have them positioned. to see how well do they perform for movies behind a 150-inch screen. One of the things that I'm really curious about too is, will the SB16s move my screen? Currently, because my Klipsch RSW-15s are a sealed design, they do not push a lot of air. They have a huge impact, and I can totally feel it. It's a very tactile feel from my listening position, but they don't blow my screen. And I even have a video on that. A lot of guys have been asking, hey, with that many subwoofers behind your screen, doesn't it shake the screen? And the answer is really no. I don't see it visually. Now, does it move it at all? I don't know. But visually, I don't see any difference in the screen. So that's a good thing. A lot of you guys have been saying, why didn't I get the PB, which is the ported sub version of this, the PB16 Ultra? And the answer is, the main reason is I don't believe I could put 2 or 4 PB16 subs behind the screen because of the ports. The ports blow way too much air, and I think it would be like the equivalent of putting a tornado behind my screen. So I know that that's probably not the best option. And on top of that, just about every subwoofer I have ever owned since I got into audio has been a sealed sub. So that's what my ears are used to. And SVS said, you know what? We want you to experience something that you're very familiar with. So that's why they wanted to send me the dual SB16s. So I'm really looking forward to getting these cranked up. Unfortunately, my wife is in bed. My kids are in bed. So this will have to wait till the next video. So I hope you guys will stay tuned for the future videos as we check out and demo the SB16s. Well guys, that'll wrap up this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to hit the bell notification so that you'll be notified when the next video drops.